Red shift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Things start out pure and then they get corrupted. That's how it goes. Cereal started out pure as, granola, and now it's Count Chocula and Lucky Charms. The internet started out pure. Now it's mass surveillance and hate speech censorship. Driving started out pure, but now it's speed limits and tickets and devices which surveil how fast you drive, and paying for a license and all that shit. Everything starts out pure and then gets corrupted. That's entropy. Evil is closely connected with entropy. You should actually probably say that evil and entropy are the same thing, or almost the same thing. Evil is like 90%, 99% overlap between evil and entropy, because evil is entropic, and, and entropy results in bad things, just like evil. Evil is unsustainable and hence predatory, and entropy is the end of things due to non-functionality. Goodness is sustainable, and that's pretty much the opposite of entropy. Entropy means that things get worse and then break or die or whatever. Goodness and sustainability are essential to progress. They basically are progress. Whereas evil does not make progress because it has no limits. It has no appreciation of the value of fair competition, and fair competition can also be called meritocracy. Evil deludes itself by lying to others and by lying to itself. It destroys rather than improving in order to make itself better than the competition so that it can win fairly. That is, evil doesn't want to compete fairly and win fairly. It wants to compete dishonestly by basically tripping the other guy so it can win the race, rather than, running faster because of having trained harder. Evil does not save or prepare for the future, but prefers to eat its seed corn, thus leading to destruction and lack of progress. Evil is regressive and good is progressive. Ironic that liberals call their movement progressivism when their beliefs are mostly foolish and destructive and consequently associated with evil and entropy. Liberalism is dysgenic, it's connected to the spreading of disease, creates poverty. Liberalism is everything bad and non-functional and degenerate and impoverishing and diseased and all the rest of it. Liberalism is closely associated with evil. But what is sustainable, responsible, virtuous, fair, concerned with the future, etc., eugenic, prosperity inducing, or at least prosperity enabling, it leaves the option open for prosperity to happen. What is conducive with all of that is, non-liberalism, conservatism, anarcho-capitalism, libertarianism, things like this. And Republicans don't fit into this category much either anymore. They don't care about the environment. They don't support... the Republicans don't care about the environment. That's destructive. They support war. That's destructive. Republicans used to be, people on the conservative end of the political spectrum, call them whatever you want back in the day. Like, they actually used to be opposed to war because, the country was founded on the principle of staying out of foreign wars. The only wars we were supposed to have were revolutionary wars when there's, tyranny happening. Right? There was supposed to be no wars. America is not supposed to wage any wars. We weren't even supposed to have a standing army. We had no cops either. So, the Republicans are the exact opposite of what they're supposed to be and what they used to be. They don't care about the environment. They support war. They're cowardly and they refuse to fight evil. They make excuses for big government, so they don't feel the need to start a revolutionary war against a tyrannical U.S. government. They always make excuses for not only not shrinking the government, but for growing it even bigger. They're always making excuses for that. They used to at least pay lip service to the idea of small government. Now they don't even do that. Now they just completely make excuses for big government or claim like big government's bad, but they really have no plan and they make no efforts to actually shrinking government. It's a big problem that people don't realize that evil and entropy are basically the same thing. And that's why psychopaths are dangerous, because they have no sense of morality, and they're too foolish to see how morality is absolutely connected, closely connected with progress, survival, and happiness, whereas evil and amorality are both closely connected to entropy, regression, destruction, loss, waste, misery, and extinction. Good is good, but evil is foolish, destructive, unsustainable, and therefore non-viable. And psychopaths don't realize this, and liberals are so brainwashed they don't realize it either, even if they're not psychopaths. The reason we have such a low standard of living these days, despite the fact that technology is supposed to raise our standard of living, is because we have massively declined in morality, and government tyranny has massively advanced. When a society declines in morality, then it becomes less cohesive, and that lack of cohesion means that people cannot fight the tyrannical powers that are oppressing them. Lack of morality also means lack of courage, so that even if the populace is cohesive, it doesn't have the will to do anything about the tyranny, even though it wishes that it had the will to do something. Lack of morality also means lack of restraint and lack of foresight, and thus a lack of ability to see how one's bad actions will have negative effects over the long term. And thus people do bad deeds that seem today to be harmless, like promiscuity, but which over time prove to be horrifically destructive. As we are seeing now with the destruction of the nuclear family, massive gynocentrism, etc., all caused by male promiscuity back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Courage is a virtue. Without it, you cannot be free. Frugality is a virtue. Without it, you cannot even be moderately prosperous, because no matter how much money you make, you can always spend more than you make, and thus be perpetually broke. Kindness is a virtue. Kindness is another virtue, and without it, people would kill and steal and do all kinds of other bad things that prevent a functional society from existing. Honesty is a virtue. Without honesty, people steal and delude others and lie to themselves and others, and thus totally lose sight of what is important and what is not. Without knowing what is the truth, you cannot do anything good or productive. And if you tell lies, you are unable to know the truth. You get lost in a mental perceptual maze of your own lies. This is why avoiding lying to anyone for any reason is literally probably the most important thing in the world. And compassion is a very, very close second. No matter how technologically advanced your society is, it is impossible for a populace to have a high moral standard if the populace is not moral. It's impossible for a populace to have a high standard of living if the populace is not moral. It also basically is impossible for people to be deeply and truly happy as individuals if they are not moral people. And conversely, no matter how primitive a society is, if it is a moral society, it will be a happy and functional society. Even today, there's probably people living out in the jungle in South America and Africa and stuff, very, very primitive people, and yet they are almost certainly much, much happier than the average American if they have a basically functional moral society due to having a society that is, monogamous and truth-oriented and compassion-oriented and consequences-oriented. Because America's not honest, America's not compassionate, America's not consequences-oriented, America's not free. People in the jungle have more freedom than we do. For real. So people in the jungle can be way, way happier than us. No matter how primitive they are, no matter how much lacking in technology they are, because, they follow basic moral principles. So they can have a happy, functional society, even though it's super primitive. So technology does not inherently make people happier or have a higher standard of living, because that greater standard of living that technology should be giving is skimmed off the top by all the stealing by the government and the multinational corporations and the billionaires and the psychopaths. You see? So this is how it is. Technology does not inherently make people happier or standard of living higher. It should, but it doesn't, especially because most people are cowardly and allow that stealing and tyranny to take place. Sure, in a primitive society, there will be tragedies that could have been avoided if there had been technology. People getting injured and not being able to, get fixed because of there being no surgery. People dying of simple lung sicknesses like bronchitis, sicknesses that can easily be cured today with modern medicine. But, even with all the unnecessary tragedies that happen in a very primitive society that might exist today in a jungle or something, a society that is highly moral will still be very happy and very functional. But a society that is way more advanced than our society even, with way, way, way more advanced technology, that society too will be non-functional and miserable if it is not moral. Morality is a prerequisite to freedom. Or you can say freedom is a prerequisite to morality too. I think they're kind of both utterly foundational to society. And I think they interact with each other. Freedom forces people to be moral, and morality is what allows people to have the courage and functionality and cohesiveness to gain back freedom. So morality and freedom are kind of causes of each other. Morality causes freedom, and freedom causes morality. And, these things are super, super important. Without these things, without freedom and morality, there will be no happiness and no good standard of living, no matter how advanced technology is. There could be people on other planets right now, today, who, billions of light years from us or whatever, and they have, technology thousands of years more advanced than ours. Super, super advanced technology that would seem like magic to us. And yet those people, if they don't have morality, I guarantee you they're miserable. I guarantee it. Because morality, and if they don't have freedom, they're miserable too. Because freedom and morality are an absolute prerequisite to happiness and high standard of living. No matter how high technology is, you'll still have a shitty standard of living if you don't have morality and freedom in that society. Morality is a prerequisite to personal happiness, and it's also a prerequisite to having a functional, sustainable society. People today are so lost that they don't even realize this simple truth that people of the past were aware of with stark clarity. This truth that good is good and is conducive to progress and happiness, and that evil and immorality are conducive to misery, poverty, slavery, destruction, degradation, loss, and regression of all kinds. Good is good because it works both on an individual level and on a societal level, and in the financial realm and in the emotional realm, in the relationship realm and in the technological realm, in the political realm and in the corporate realm, in the religious realm and in the ecological realm. Good works everywhere and in everything. Good works for everything and everywhere. Whereas evil is evil because it doesn't work. It doesn't last. It destroys. It makes people miserable over the long term, but also often over the short term too. Evil degrades souls. It degrades technology. It degrades humanity's stability, etc., etc. Good is good and evil is evil. If you want to be happy, you need to be good. If you want to avoid misery, you need to avoid evil and immorality. Don't kill. Spare even the lives of insects. Whenever you find a spider in your house, take it outside instead of killing it. Don't steal. Don't even steal little tiny things from your friends, like grabbing a yogurt from his refrigerator without asking. Don't commit sexual immorality. Don't have sex with ex-sexers other than your wife. Don't wife swap. Don't have anal sex. Don't have sex out of wedlock. Don't be a bigamist. Don't have threesomes with your wife and other women. Don't lie and don't tell big lies, don't tell little lies. Don't be inaccurate in your speech, speak very accurately, don't twist the truth, etc. Don't use intoxicants, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke pot, don't use cocaine, don't overuse caffeine, don't smoke cigarettes, not so much because of intoxication, but because of it being bad for your health, etc. Don't speak harshly. Don't yell at people. Don't insult people. Don't even do so if they yell at or insult you first. Don't speak divisively or slanderously. Don't talk shit about people behind their backs, not even if what you're saying is true. Don't be a troublemaker. In other words, don't divide people or pit people against each other. Don't speak idly. Speak as little as possible. Don't chatter a lot. Don't speak too much. The less you speak, the better. Don't have ill will toward others. Don't hate people. Don't hold resentments. Don't hold on to anger. Get angry as little as possible. And when you do get angry, let it go as quickly as possible. Don't hang on to that anger if at all possible. Let it go. Don't be greedy or envious. Don't hold wrong views, such as the view that things last. Things don't last. Don't hold delusional views like things last. Don't like the view of things, lasting. Don't hold the view of eternalism or the view of nihilism. Nihilism is not correct. Our actions do have consequences, and good is better than evil. All actions have consequences, even if those consequences are so tiny that they are imperceptible, and even if those consequences are not really much on you, but on other people, imperceptibly so. Consequences happen, absolutely and always, and you have to have faith in this because you can't always see the consequences because often they either take too long to happen or they're so subtle that you can't perceive them, but that doesn't mean they're not happening, and so you should always have faith in the law of cause and effect. And eternalism is a wrong view too because things don't last. Everything gets old, everything breaks, everything dies, everything becomes obsolete. And don't believe that, like I said, don't believe that things exist inherently. Everything depends on causes and conditions to come into existence, and everything is made out of parts. Without the cause and condition of your parents having sex and your mom gestating you and giving birth and then feeding you and clothing you and all the rest of it, you never would have survived. So everything comes into existence in dependence on causes and conditions, and everything is made out of parts. And everything is designated as the thing that it is in dependence on our mind. And in other words, everything is just imputed by your own mind. Things only come into existence when the proper causes and conditions exist, and then only exist for as long as the proper causes and conditions continue to exist. And then things disappear when the proper causes and conditions cease to exist, right? Anything can come into existence if the proper causes and conditions for coming into being are met. And nothing can come into being without the proper causes and conditions being met. Nothing exists forever, nothing is impermanent. Nothing exists forever, everything is impermanent. But nothing is inherently non-existent either. Things always come into existence if the causes and conditions exist. They just automatically spring into existence. They can't be not sprung into existence if the proper causes and conditions exist. And while things are like an illusion, they are not actually an illusion. They're just like an illusion. Things really do exist. So all of existence is not just some mental mirage that has no external reality. It just is dependently originated. And this means that things are not inherently real. This is basically the fundamental view of Buddhism and the fundamental precepts of Buddhism. All these precepts that I just gave you: not killing, not stealing, not lying, not using intoxicants or not using them much, etc., etc. These are all, and not slandering and not holding the view of eternalism, nihilism, all that stuff. That's all basically the fundamental precepts of Buddhism. If you follow these Buddhist precepts, it doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist or not. You will benefit from following the precepts. Just like if you don't believe that you're going to lose weight by lifting weights and cycling and limiting your intake of calories, but you do it anyway, then you will end up losing weight, and getting stronger, even if you don't think that you will, because cause and effect is what makes things happen. Belief is not necessary, just the practice of these precepts. You don't have to believe in Buddha or reincarnation. You don't even have to believe in the efficacy of the precepts. Just try it out. Try following the precepts for a couple of months or something. All you have to do is follow the precepts and the good effects will happen. Although it is helpful to have some faith in the validity of the precepts in order to enable you to follow them. Meditation is also very good. Following the precepts is very good. But if you follow the precepts and meditate, then you'll gain even more advantage, significantly more. And if you meditate without following the precepts, then your negative actions in violating the precepts will harm your meditation, and you'll not be able to make as much progress in meditation, and you'll not be able to make the progress that you do make nearly as quickly as you would be able to if you were following the precepts. Anyone who understands and practices this is wise, and anyone who does not is foolish. And sure, I violate some of the precepts on a regular basis, such as the precept against idle speech, but I try to follow most of the precepts most of the time. So I'm pretty foolish for not following the precepts more closely. I'm not trying to be all up on a high horse when saying this. I'm just saying it's definitely true. And whenever I see some unhappiness in myself, it's usually as a result of having violated one of the precepts. So even if I don't follow the precepts, it strengthens my faith that, yes, there you go, right there. I'm miserable because I broke this particular precept, or I'm unhappy temporarily because of this reason, because of this. Yep, that's a violation of the precepts, and that just gives me more faith that, yep, the precepts really are a massive source of happiness. And if you break the precepts, you will bring on suffering onto yourself. That's just the way it works. So just, try following the precepts really strictly, all of them, for, 2 months or something. And I guarantee you, if you're following all the precepts, your happiness will increase. And you'll have a lot more peacefulness, and you get along with people better and everything. I'm just saying all this because it's definitely true, and it's an important point. Following the precepts leads to not harming others and leads to happiness on a personal level, as well as less chaos in the minds of others, because if someone yells at you, then if you don't yell back, then you both keep your own mind calm, and you prevent the other person's mind from being riled up even further. If you yell back, the other person might yell back even louder and might even start throwing things and making their mind all that much more upset and miserable. And then when you finally part from them, if you yelled back and the other person lost almost all self-control, then the other person will be far more miserable than they would be if you had refrained from yelling back. So by not doing bad deeds, we can make ourselves less miserable and we can make others less miserable. And if we follow the precepts carefully enough and meditate enough and have outward circumstances which are at least moderately good, then we can be happy. In my opinion, outward circumstances are important too. You're not going to be typically too happy if you're being tortured, no matter how much of a good person you are, even though your peace on a deep level will be still there. You may not notice it, that your peace and happiness still exist on a deep level, but it will still be there. Even some Buddhist masters have been tortured in prison for years and have still maintained their peace of mind and their loving kindness and their ability to be forgiving, and have sent out messages on the importance of compassion to their students from their prison cell. So even if you're being tortured, you can be happy, although probably more while you're in between torture sessions, more than while you're being tortured, especially if you're not very mentally evolved through lots of meditation. But actually, true happiness is a much more deep-level thing. It's not a superficial thing like excitement or temporary joy. And this is also related to contentment. And contentment is not just a good quality for guys to have. It's also a very good quality for XXers to have. I would even go so far as to say that if an XXer does not have contentment, she is not worth marrying. An XXer with contentment can be frugal, faithful, loving, etc. But an XXer who does not have contentment cannot be any of those things, and she cannot be trusted, because if she's not a person who has contentment, then she won't be content while she's dating you either, and she will constantly be seeking to trade up to a better guy. She will leave you for a better guy, and then leave him for an even better guy, and then leave him for an even better guy, for as long as she can get away with it. Girls without contentment, are like that. Girls with contentment are not like that. But girls without contentment often are like that. They're hypergamous and whatnot, right? Girls of the past had way more contentment than today's XXers have. It's partly the immorality of the end of the empire, and it's partly the pace of technological development, and it's partly the propaganda, and it's partly the misery and the promiscuity. Many things contribute to making today's XXers so lacking in contentment, but if raised properly, XXers can absolutely be content. At least XXers with good genes can. That is, with some Nawaltish genes. If you want to be happy, you have to follow the precepts and also meditate regularly. Let's say, I don't know, 6 days a week, preferably 7 days a week. I'm just saying, like, if you miss the occasional day here and there every once in a while, it's totally okay. But you should regularly try to meditate every day. Virtue is the source of happiness, and evil/amorality is the source of misery. You know, breaking the precepts is the source of misery. Virtue is the source of societal progress, and evil/amorality is the source of societal breakdown and stagnation and regression. Good is good, and evil is stupid and destructive and misery-inducing. This is very important to understand. It's important for all of society to understand it, and it's important for individuals to understand for the sake of their individual happiness. And it's important to understand that you cannot change all of society, but neither is it a good idea to live in an evil and foolish society which not only is a bad influence on you, but also punishes you for being virtuous and rewards you for being ruthless, dishonest, thieving, etc. That is, until the whole society collapses. It's important to understand that when society is evil, it's both wise from a selfish perspective, and it's virtuous and benevolent to form your own community when society is evil, right? From a selfish perspective, it's totally possible to be wise from a selfish perspective. And if you're wise from a selfish perspective, you realize the wisdom of being good. Just from a selfish perspective, it's wise to be good, right? And so you're going to form your own community when you live in an evil society, whether you're wisely selfish or whether you're, wise out of benevolence, right? Either way, you want to form your own community full of only good, virtuous people so that you have people around you who are a good influence on you and who do not punish you for being good, but admire you for being good and praise you for being good, and so that you get an advantage from being good, rather than in society today where you get a disadvantage from being good and an advantage from being evil. You see, that only happens at the end of an empire, getting an advantage from being evil and a disadvantage from being good. And in a normal society like we had 100 years ago, you get an advantage from being good and a disadvantage from being evil. You see, and when everybody around you is good and they encourage you to be good and they reward you for being good and punish you for being evil, this helps you reform and not repeat any evil actions that you do make. By forming your own community, you not only massively lower your chances of divorce, and you not only enable everyone in the community to save much more money than if they were paying rent in the outside world, but you also incentivize virtue and disincentivize vice, thus making yourself and everyone else in the community much happier and much more cohesive. This has been Redshift. Hopefully someone got something out of this video. Peace.